I wanted to show you some optional material that you may want to think about asking your parents to purchase for you. Again, these are optional, but they can kind of enrich what we're doing, especially because once you see the material I'm giving you, we're a little bit limited. There's nothing with color in there. And if you're like me, I just love color. So I want to first show you the most important part, which is having a sketchbook. Again, it's not required, but it can be helpful. So there are basically a couple of types of sketchbooks out there. If you like doing a lot of pen and ink, you might want to consider the one on your left of the screen there. It's a mixed media, which means you can use almost anything on it, from watercolors to ink markers to Copic markers. It's not as thick as Bristol board, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. So you'd want to do what I'm doing right there, which is to put a throwaway scrap paper behind the drawing paper that you're actually drawing on. So you want to just tuck it in behind there. That way, if you're using Copic or some kind of ink on there, it doesn't bleed through the paper. So it's tough to find a really durable paper. You could probably get away with watercolor, but you'd have to make sure you weight down your sketchbook so the paper doesn't kind of buckle. And these sketchbooks range from like 11 by 8.5 to 9 by 12. This one is a smooth Bristol board. This is the premium. It's expensive. You don't get that much, only 15 sheets. It looks like, and that paper is super thick. So if you did want a heavy weight, you'd go for Bristol. Some of you may already have these supplies laying around at home. If you do, that's great. Just start incorporating them into our daily routine. Whenever we do a sketch, it should go in that sketchbook if you have it. If you have not purchased a sketchbook and you want to, again, highly recommended, I would go with an 11 by 8.5 or a 9 by 12. So don't do a pocket size, do an actual size that's close to a letter size book. And I do like the spiral bounds because then they don't fall apart on you. Some sketchbooks will kind of fall apart if they're just glued. So I just wanted to show you, this is my personal sketchbook, but it's kind of good to kind of keep a record of what you're doing and where you're progressing with your goals. So it can be a great way to kind of stash and record things. This is something that we'll need later on. You don't necessarily have to have it right away, but we need a roll of masking tape. That's artist tape, but masking tape would be just fine. If you're interested in working with charcoal, you are welcome to use charcoal on any of our pencil drawing exercises. It can work just as well. I would like to do some ink work with you guys, and one of the great ways of doing ink is by using a Micron pen. So there are all these drawing pens out there. You can look some up on Amazon, but if you are interested, I would recommend that you get a set of them. Like a set of 4 would be perfect. They have them in all various sizes, so I would look for a black ink set. Otherwise, you'll be using what I'm providing, and that's just a big pen, so a pretty cheap pen. If you are picky about materials, I would purchase some. They're pretty reasonably priced. A few of you may have these too. These are like Copic markers. These ones are actually Prismacolors, but they are alcohol-based markers, and they are double-ended. So on one end, it is a fine point, or a relatively fine point. On the other end, it's either kind of a chisel head or it's going to be a brush, like a marker brush. So in this case, it's a brush one. That's, again, optional. But if you love color and you want something that's not messy at all, and rich, beautiful colors, any color you can think of, Copic or Prismacolors makes. The only drawback is they are pretty expensive, so you'll have to put on a really sweet face to your parents if you want that. And this is a staple. You have to have some kind of pencil sharpener, and heads up, I prefer to have handheld sharpeners. I find that they don't break off the points as much. You do also need to have a ruler, and it doesn't matter the kind of ruler you have, whether it's a wooden one or a plastic one, but you do need to have measurements in inches, and preferably doesn't have to, but preferably you'd have centimeters on the other side as well. Many students swear by watercolors. So if you wanted to use watercolors in your work, you're welcome to. You can pick up a cheap set. You don't have to get a professional grade set. So this is something rather fancy, but I thought I would show it to you anyway. These are pastels, and they are soft pastels. They're the powdery kind. Pastels can be messy, and they're certainly not for everybody. You have to like that texture, but it does arrive at an effect that's very similar to paint. So you can get a 12 set, or you can get even more. They have them all the way to like 120, but you don't need all those colors. Pastels you can kind of mix and you can layer. These type of pastels, the soft pastels, are really buttery and they never will lose their rich colors. Okay, so to start off with, you need a collection of objects to draw. And I recommend objects that are easy to transport, or maybe they're already in your room. But I'm showing you the kinds of things that I collected. They're just like children's toys, books, stuff from the pantry, a plant. Those are the kinds of things that would be great. So don't pick something too basic, pick something a little bit complex. Or you can have one simple object, but then have another one that has a lot of detail to it. So a gesture drawing is basically a very quick time sketch. So they can range from like 60 seconds to 10 minutes. It depends on what you're drawing. So I'm going to be timing you while you sketch, and you're supposed to do this kind of energetic stroke. You want to kind of get your hand and your elbow and even your shoulder in it as you're working. You want to like use more of your arm than you normally would. And you're not going to care if you have a little bit of proportion problem. So if there's an error, just keep going. The goal is to do it quickly and to copy it down as fast as you can, document what you're seeing. So I thought we would start off with hands because you've already had a little bit of practice with them. And I don't want you to care about how accurate your hand is right now. I just want you to document it quickly. So I put on these sketches how long it's taking me at the end of it. So it'll either be like 1 minute or 2 minutes. So we're going to start off with some short times. A gesture is really great when you are in a classroom and you want to draw someone's like sitting at a desk in front of you, or something that's going to be moving soon. Like if your dog is taking a nap and you want to do a quick gesture just to capture the essence of that thing. Gestures kind of go back to the era of like the Renaissance, and they've been something that's popular today. They're quick, they're not a time commitment, and you get practice really fast with doing those gestures. They can be frustrating if you're not used to working quickly, but again, it's more important that you document rapidly and you get the big shapes than it is the detail. And it is okay to have like spidery motion or energetic strokes. That's actually what we're looking for here. Traditionally, gestures are really good if you're drawing the full figure, but it's also good for what we're doing now, which is still life. That's stuff that doesn't move, with the exception of your hand, of course. So I'm looking at a house plant there, and I'm trying to document it quickly. Now it is in time lapse, so you should realize I'm not actually drawing that fast, but you kind of get the idea. Rough, not caring over much about getting things exactly accurate. I'm just trying to get it down quickly. We're beginning with these small sketches. What I mean by small is short amount of time, so 60 seconds to 2 minutes kind of sketches, and then we're going to build up. So this sketch that I'm working on right now, that I think is going to be an 8-minute sketch. So if you find that you have time, you can start to add some shading. And you can see here that I'm not using a pencil, I'm using a pen. So for something like this, it's whatever medium, remember medium is material, you prefer. You can even use a combination of mediums. So I'm alternating between blue and black pen on that one just for fun. Liven it up. And it should kind of look almost like an illustration. You're going to feel this a large amount of time, like 7 minutes is going to feel way longer than it did before this exercise, and you'll start to be able to do a lot in that time frame. So have fun with these, allow them to be energetic, permit yourself to make mistakes, and just practice. You'll do fine. I thought I would give you one more example of how to do your Google slide and prepare it for presenting. So again, you're only doing one slide, one picture or image. You're going to be inputting the critical information on the slide, so the title of the work, the artist's name, the medium or material that the artist is using, the dimensions of the piece, the year it was made, and of course, the actual piece itself. So when it comes time to actually talking about the work, I recommend that you have a separate piece of paper or a document open where you can look at your notes, maybe have a bulleted list of about 5 or more items that you can talk about. Not sure if I warned you about this, but in art, the human body is treated as a subject. So there is a nude in this one. It is not sexualized. So it's just a body behind this person. And you do need to understand the historical context of this piece. First of all, this came right after Impressionism and Fauvism. So if you remember, Impressionism is about Monet and capturing light. If you've ever seen Impressionist work, it's very popular. So at the late part of the 1800s, so later part of the 1800s, photography became widespread, which kind of meant that artists weren't needed to make perfect portraits anymore, because that's what artists were traditionally doing, right? Because there was no way of documenting without making a painting until photography. And then photography made it cheap, effective, and photography is quite accurate. So most people switched. That kind of freed artists up in a way to kind of paint more along the lines of what they wanted and to kind of revolt or rebel against the photograph. So this artist is not trying to do a representation of reality. They're actually diving deeper than that. They're focusing on psychological impact. So this is the artist's self-portrait, which you can see that's pretty gruesome for a self-portrait. The soldier up front, he's got this kind of sallow skin, this vacant expression. He's got this cigarette listlessly drooping from the corner of his mouth. One hand is almost hook-like. It's kind of curled over, and then he's actually missing his right hand. It's actually chopped off. And then there's this figure who's pretty skinny in the background, completely nude. Here's what you need to know about the artist himself. He was enlisted in World War I. He's a German artist, and he was an artist before he went to war. But then when he came back, this is the kind of work he made. You have to kind of put yourself in the place of a German soldier. He was on the front lines, which means they were in trenches with barbed wire. And he saw many things that were horrific. In fact, I mean, you can just imagine being there for not like a few months, but years on the front line and seeing people blown up, people that you know and care about. So he was kind of psychologically hurt by all that warfare that he saw. Just by looking at this painting, which was painted when he was given leave, you can tell that he had some real fears about the war. It's important to understand that his chopped off hand is a metaphor, that it's not real. What it is a symbol of the suffering that he witnessed, and also kind of showing how he feels on the inside about what happened to him and the people around him.